Welcome back to the 11Tenths podcast. It is episode
7.
And today we're actually going to talk about something that I think we've got a decent amount of experience between, and we'd love to share with you.
Yep.
All the ways that you can drive quickly. Legally, yeah, exactly what I was going to say. So we wanted to take you through talking about all the ways and what to expect that you can get your car and your skills in all the racing scenarios, because there really is actually a lot out there. If you've watched past episodes, we've talked about Autocross, we've talked about, racing schools, simulators. There's all sorts of ways to get at it, but we wanted to go a little bit more in depth with this episode. So I'm here with owner-operator Randy Spar. I am David Balazic, Milk for Coffee. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Where did you think would be the best place to start?
I still believe that dabbling in autocross is the best way to start.
Okay.
Because you start to learn a lot of the dynamics of weight transfer, and it all happens at a relatively safe, low speed, like second or third gear. Vision, your main focus is vision, so that's amazing to start, learning to really look at where you have to go.
Okay.
The car starts sliding out of control. You want to focus on where you want to go, not where you're headed.
Yeah.
Also, the cost, it's relatively inexpensive. You're looking at $40 or $50 for a day. And, it's minimal wear on the car. A lot of people think it's pretty bad tire wear, but really it's not. I mean, the loads on the engine in second or third gear are minuscule compared to doing a fourth gear pull at 200 kilometers an hour, against the wind. And, at most Sport GP, it's uphill. I mean, that's a lot of load on the engine.
Yeah.
And also it's just grassroots. The camaraderie is pretty amazing there. You get to meet a lot of people, and they're all very helpful. And the car setup isn't as important. So it's definitely a race what you brung type environment. We see people come with like little SUVs and stock cars, and you want to just dabble in it, and there's classing for everything. So you may not be competing against the Miata that you're parked beside in the paddock, but you'll be paired up against someone else. You can actually see how you would do on the SCCA scale. They have like a PAX factorial system there, right? So
the PAX system is obviously, so it takes into effect, both the type of car, your modifications. Right. It basically classes you. So obviously you want to be put into a class where you've got similar cars, right? Yeah. The interesting part is that you'll see, like you said, a giant variance of cars, and it's not necessarily that, a monster. A perfect example, last year, we were coming out to one of the autocross events, and there was a AMG GTR, the monster of a Benz. Yeah. And it didn't look like one of the fastest cars out there. I don't remember how it fared, but then you've got guys who are in, let's be honest, some pretty beat up cars that are absolutely ripping it. Yeah. Comparatively speaking, it could be either way. Like one could look slow, be going fast. One could look fast, be going slow. But it shows you there's a massive spread of the types of cars, and it's local.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. There's many organizations here within the city that hosts these events. And some of them are in parking lots. Others are on a racetrack. Like we went to the
Gray Region.
They have their auto slalom or autocross event up at an oval track up in kind of in Gray Region. Yep. And so they set up a slalom course on the oval. And so you're on the banked corners, and then on the straights there's a bit of a chicane, and you do basically a lap and a half, and that's one session there. And so it was great fun. It was awesome.
It was definitely unique, and I mean that's the thing, right? Obviously they've got theirs there. Usually it's in a parking lot. Right. I know you host with Trillium.
Yep.
You've also, there's Piddle events as well.
Yep.
Right.
A lot of them are either some of the casino parking lots and the Go Train parking lots. Trillium's at the CAA Center, which is formerly the Powerade Center in Brampton. Some of the clubs will actually rent out an abandoned airfield, like Picton or Centralia,
right?
And those are really fun because you can get up to like some pretty good speeds. I mean, we're up in fourth gear,
And it's not a track. It's accessible.
Yeah, you're out there alone. You're not harming anyone. There's basically you and a couple of cones, and if you kind of take a corner too quick, you just spin out. No harm, no foul. You just spin right out and you just continue.
Yeah, it's a like you said, it's a minimal effect on the wear of the car. Usually, you're not getting out of second or third gear in most cases. And it's a nice event. Like, I mean, you get to an event and you basically start off. I will say that it's probably more involved grassroots to the point where they can use your help setting up.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, a lot of the organizations, it's mandatory to volunteer.
Yep.
So after you do your run, you come in, and there's somebody that's usually in charge of the volunteers, and they'll assign you to be a marshal at a corner or to help, with tear down or with like timing or whatever needs to be done. So it's required.
It gives that vibe, right? You're part of it, and that's obviously why they can keep the price down. They want people to come and enjoy themselves, but also to help. So it is a very good group setting there. Talking about the course itself, we keep talking about cones and pylons. If you're not aware, it's literally a course is taken out of a basically any area, and it's built up out of cones.
That's right. Yeah, they just put basically cones like gates and slaloms, and to the new person, it might be a little intimidating because when you get there, you just look out and you just see a sea
of red cones.
And then after the drivers' meeting, everyone does a track walk, and you kind of do the walk, and you can do several walks. Sometimes, like pre-pandemic, you're able to ride shotgun and somebody that's more experienced in their car and see, the course. And of course, like the first run, generally everyone takes it easy because they're just trying to get the bearings right. So they're trying to figure out where to go. Usually it's five time runs. So the first one is really more for practice, and then 4, where they're competitive, you're trying to get a good time. Now, the nice thing about the auto slalom also, it kind of levels the playing field because the course changes every event. It's a whole different course. So everyone out there is walking the course, and none of them have driven the course. So it's all like you'll get the experienced guys that will kind of know that, they realize that you're going through this gate, the next gate is over there. So that means you're going to want to slow down excessively through this gate and do a late apex so that you can actually go to that gate over there, as opposed to barreling through this and then you're like, oh, it's over there, and then you turn it and then it just completely screws your line up. So you'll notice that when certain people are more seasoned, they'll know how to take certain gates or corners relative to the next gate. So you'll really have to plan ahead. That's what it is. Again, vision. Vision is really important in autocross. And then the vision will translate into a track. A track generally has 8 to 15 corners locally. So after a few laps, exactly you got to turn right and you got to turn left, right. It's no big deal. But the autocross really will get you up to speed with vision, like scanning and checking out, different aspects of the track, different turn-in points, braking points, traffic, marshals. There's a lot that you have to actually be.
It's a very condensed format. It's I'll openly admit the one event I went to last year. It took me 2 runs before I even figured out where the hell the course was, and that's a little embarrassing, I'll be honest. But it takes the vision. Pay attention on the track walk. That's kind of key. I will say that of all the different race events, you will not see more understeer, I'd say, than at an autocross course. It is. It's pretty cool, despite how slow you're going. It is. It can be quite aggressive. Yeah,
that's what I was saying about. A lot of weight transition. So you want to transfer weight and really load the front tires up to get more bite into a corner. So if you have to make a violent right, you want to stab the brakes, load up the front, turn, get all the weight on the front so you have grip, and then when you turn. So generally you don't want to do that on the track, right? So there is definitively a different driving style for autocross than at the track. But, sometimes if you get bent out of shape at the autocross, you learn to power out and
Yeah.
learn to kind of, you know, again, weight transfer is key with autocross.
Worst case scenario, you've missed your run, maybe you hit a cone, you get a couple of seconds added. Like, it's really not that bad. So it's a great place to learn.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great segue. Let's talk about a completely different. It's not a race event. Let's dive into schools, because how do you learn all these different things if you really want to dive into the advanced?
That's it.
Right?
So I mean, a lot of people love just going to a track lapping day.
Yeah.
Now, lapping days are fine. They're good money-wise. Like, they're cheap. You usually arrive and drive. I mean, TMP, what do they charge? Like $90, $110 for
It's fairly,
a couple hours at the end of the day.
Fairly cheap.
So, but the issue with that is you can develop a lot of really bad habits. You go out there and you're, you know, like motoring along, and your seat all tilted back.
I've seen that.
Listening to the tunes, and you're downshifting mid-corner, and you're doing like all the bad stuff that you just think is normal, because that's what you do driving to work, right?
I saw a guy locally literally videotaping himself for his Snapchat or Instagram on track at one of the fastest corners of Cayuga in a Civic, and he's like, that's the stuff that you might see at an open lapping track day.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, talent at 40 kilometers an hour.
So I would recommend, like, trying to at least get one school in before you start lapping. So you want to get some ground rules and some basic training on your deceleration, your shift points, and your entries and your exits and the apex and the nomenclature and the terms and all that stuff, and obviously the flags, right?
There's etiquette on track.
There is etiquette, yeah. I mean, there's passing zones and there's no passing zones, and there's a lot of rules. And the rules are there to make it safer, not to ruin the fun at all. You know, I mean, it's just, they're there for a reason.
Yeah, it's funny now. I've joined. I'm newer to all this, and I've joined Trillium a couple times. I've done Hansen as well. And what I've seen just on my own analysis, is I've seen some drivers come in who believe they are literally the king or queen. And I can actually count on one hand already how many times those particular individuals are the ones that have spun out.
Yeah.
You know, maybe have gone home with a car that's seen a little bit of scrapes or damaged ego.
Yeah, so generally, like, I am part of this instructor corps for the last 21 years. I've been instructing for numerous clubs, including Ferrari and BMW and Hansen and all these other clubs. And generally, like, during the instructor meeting, you know, they'll start naming off like some of the students that you should probably, you know,
be careful with.
Yeah. And those are the ones that pull in with like the full suit. They got like their Alpenstar, they're fully kitted out, not a single day on the track, you know, and they're ready. You know, they have the 700 horsepower, you know, turbocharged Audi R8 or something crazy.
Well, it's easy. Like, we love, if you haven't heard the Smoking Tire podcast, but they were literally just talking about this, where anyone can literally walk into a McLaren showroom and buy a 720S,
765,
whatever it's going to be, and it'll be stupid fast.
Yeah.
That's not the point. The point is with the schools is you learn about safety, and then it does come down. Priority is vision, but you're learning how the car handles. And some, you know, oh no, I've got to spend some time in class. The in-class sessions are actually, it really gives you a good visual representation, because everyone's a different learner. In terms of how you learn about the track, you learn what your car does. They may have a visual representation on a whiteboard. I've seen with the RC car to show weight transfer, like just showing you visually. It really is all encompassing, and they range from 300, 400 up to thousands depending on the school that you go to.
Yeah, it depends on the size of the school. So some of the smaller schools, you get more track time, there's less traffic, but you pay more, because obviously the track costs X amount to rent for the weekend, and if it's divided by 300 people or 100 people, you can imagine that you're going to be charging a lot more money.
Every track is different too.
Every track's different. Now there are some really good schools. You know, there's Infinite Motorsports, Pinnacle, Drive Tech has a school. You know, we've done the Trillium school. I would say Trillium is probably one of the largest and one of the oldest schools, and they've also got a really fair price structure. Yeah. I think if you were to buy the package where you buy all 4 schools, I think they have 4 or 5 schools per year. at Christmas, if you buy all 5 together, they give you a package deal, and I think it's right down to like even $500 at a school or $400, and that's a 2-day school at the Most Sport GP on the weekend. I mean, most of these other schools I was mentioning are 1 day during the week, and 1 day during the week, and they're still $500-600. So you're getting like a weekend date, which generally costs a lot more to rent the track on a weekend, and it's a 2-day event. And now they may not have as much track time, so Trillium likes to break the entire day down into 3 different activities. So you have in-class theory, where you're in the class and with the rest of your run group, and you're listening to an instructor, and they're going through terminology, and they've got like a slide projector, and they're basically going through the corner, and they got a little easel, and they're pointing at different examples, and then the other portion of it is on a skid pad. So they have a large skid pad where they set up like a decreasing radius and a slalom and a power circle, where you learn oversteer and understeer and how to regain control from an oversteer situation. So everything's done at like a lower speed, but at least if you get into a situation where you're going sideways on the track, you're familiar with the feeling, because you just experienced that on the skid pad. And then of course the on track, pre-pandemic, you would have an instructor assigned to you for the entire weekend, and they would be in the passenger seat riding shotgun with a mandatory communicator, so that he's not screaming and flailing their arms. He's basically he can monitor your breathing to see if you're like panicked or how you're doing. He sees your hand motions, he sees when you're shifting, make sure, and that's really how it's supposed to be done. So
it's involved, and every school has a different level of that. And there's many, so you kind of want to see what you can afford, but ideally see what works best for you there.
Also, some of them are exclusive to the brand. So if you're part of PCA, or if you want to get into a Porsche, you have to own a Porsche to be part of the club and to experience their schools. Ferrari, same thing with Ferrari. You need to own a Ferrari to be part of that. BMW, although you'd think you have to BMW, but you don't. I'm going to say probably 30% of the cars there are not BMWs, maybe even more, maybe like half now. It's pretty awesome, the amount of like the machinery. We see the McLarens and Vipers and Vets and everything comes to BMW.
And it is like autocross, because there are different groups in terms of your experience as well. So you grow within the school. Your first time out on track, you're not buzzing around with the guys who are in the race school. Like, it is a completely different group, and it's nice. It's a graduated.
That's a good point. They do have different like levels of experience. So you would start in the novice group, and everyone there is like literally there for the first, maybe second time. So you're not going to feel like an idiot if you make a mistake, because mistakes happen. I mean, not an expensive mistake. I'm just saying, like, they give the wrong pass signal at the wrong time, like that kind of a mistake. But the other thing I might want to maybe mention is that, so Trillium, they do schools mostly on the big track at Most Sport. I would also recommend maybe starting at like a slower pace track, like the DDT. So DDT stands for Driver Development Track at Most Sport. That track is more like third gear, the whole track, versus Most Sport, which you get fourth, fifth gear, and there's only like 10 corners at Most Sport, whereas DDT there's, I don't know how many, 15 or 16, I can't remember, but so the DDT, it's a little bit less intimidating. Most Sport is the fastest track in North America. So to dive into the fastest track, it might be a little bit much for some people, especially if you have that 765 McLaren that you just picked up. So, not only will your instructor will be changing their underwear at the end of the day.
It's true. And the idea is that with some of the smaller tracks and slower cars, you're getting a better feel of the car. We've talked about this there, where a lot of modern cars come with a lot of aids, and that's why they're so fast. You can see, guys like Randy, guys who have been doing this for years, and racers, they know that it's actually more efficient to leave the most aggressive traction control on, because Porsche builds it or Ferrari builds it to be the fastest with all the computers and sensors they have. But that's not necessarily learning how to control the weight of the car, the balance, and maybe not necessarily all the finer things. And that's part of a fast track issue too.
I know that certain schools would really prefer, actually they want you to keep the traction aids on. Other schools, you have to discuss it with your instructor to see if he's comfortable with you turning your aids off, because you are essentially risking his life.
Or her life.
Him or her life, yeah. So Hansen was a good example. Like Hansen, they don't mind you getting a little bit bent out of shape, because they believe that is part of the learning experience. Where Trillium, they try and, again, it's a faster track. So Hansen's at the DDT, Trillium's at the GP track. So Trillium would like to have as little incidences as possible. Now, something I also don't want to forget to mention is that BMW Trillium is recognized as a learning institute with the government of Ontario. So you get a tax receipt, and that also means that your insurance covers you. If there's an incident on the track, your insurance will cover you. So that's the only school. In fact, that's the only time you're going to be on a track where your personal insurance will cover you. Now, if you wanted to do a lapping day or a time attack or something else, there is race insurance that you can purchase for a one-day event. That's it. So, the race insurance will cover your vehicle. I think it's like a 1% of the value of the car. So if it's a $30,000 car, it's $300 for the day. Typically, that's what they charge, as a premium. So, but Trillium, you can do that now. You will get the payout. Now, I don't know what happens upon renewal process, or, it goes on your record. So just keep that in mind,
it's not a free pass.
Yeah. You don't really want to have, it's not a free pass to go, sideways through 4. So that's it.
But so there's a lot of, good things about a school. Some schools that we didn't mention, there are manufacturers' schools where you actually use cars that the manufacturer provides. So I know AMG will do that, M will do that.
BMW M.
Yeah, sometimes they'll do that where it's a winter session, where they'll do that as well. So that
there'll be some exotic rental places will actually have a day where they rent out the GDT, and you can come and try the different exotics there. I think you only get like 4 or 5 laps in on each, and there's a follow the leader. But it's not really a school; it's more of an experience.
That's an experience kind of thing
to see what the car is like. So,
but you're trying to figure out what's best for you, and keep that in mind that with the track and the autocross, you're bringing your own car, so it's more expensive for the school. But if you're going through the actual manufacturer, that does get into the actual thousands of dollars, because technically you're using someone else's car there. There are schools that also include being able to drive formula cars. Or the track owns cars, or the school owns cars. Famous ones like Bondurant or
open wheel.
Open wheel. Fellows is now, I think, trying to do it as well around Fellows at Mosport. So there are other options where you can rent a car there too. So do a little bit of research and see. Obviously, we've talked quite a bit about Trillium and Hansen, and Pinnacle's another one that we know of very well. And
Brack.
There's a lot. So see what works well for you, locally, price-wise, and just kind of see what fits. But be aware that you're there to learn. So be open-minded with it. You're not an expert right off the bat. No one really is. So just be there and be open-minded.
Now, one more thing. A lot of people come to me and they're like, "I'm ready to go to the schools. Like, I need a supercharger. I need a big brake kit. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't need any of that. What you need is a car that's safe. You can just bring, it doesn't even have to be an M, just bring a 328. It doesn't have to be. The only thing I would suggest is maybe,
fresh fluids.
Fresh fluids, like your brake fluid for sure, to change that, because that'll boil over the first few laps. Tires, you're not going to want to bring like an all season or run flat or whatever BMW, provided with the car. I mean, you can get away with it, but you'll soon realize that that's going to be your weak.
You get limited by it.
Yeah, your weak point, and everyone's going to be, you're going to be holding up traffic because you're running all seasons. So put a proper performance tire on there. Doesn't even have to be a competition tire, even just like a Michelin PS4S or a Michelin Super Sport or something like just a high-end tire, and that would be fine. That's it. So I would say brake fluid. Make sure your fluids are relatively new.
That's actually
certifiable. So make sure you take it you have to anyways go for a tech inspection. They check all the ball joints. They check everything. Make sure it's safe. And really, that's all you need, right?
Yeah. The tech inspection really is like a more advanced safety. And it's smart to do it because you want to be 100% sure that your car is not going to have any issues. It's pretty straightforward, and you don't have to have the wildest car out there. Some of the some of the fun is really just being able to ring your car out. And, I've seen guys that are doing, 2/10ths in their super fast, whatever you want to call it. And there's guys who are going 7 or 8/10ths in their smaller daily driver.
Yeah, and their little 200 horsepower BRZ, and they're having a blast.
They're loving it because the car is near the limit. The nice part is with the schooling in autocross, it does translate back to being on the street. And I'm not saying to race on the street, but what I'm saying is in the event of an emergency, or we deal with winters here in Canada, the idea that first of all, what anti-lock braking feels like, the rear end coming out or the front end washing out, you may not have ever felt that.
Yeah.
So to know and expect that's some of the skid pad exercises, that's some of the stuff that you go to, and it really actually does make you a better driver. It's not necessarily about just being faster. It's overall just being a better driver. So after that,
one more thing.
So many things.
This is where we probably should have started with this, but this isn't so much for the driving enthusiast, but maybe if you have like that 16-year-old or 17-year-old son or daughter that wants to kind of get into it, there is something held by the Tire Rack and both PCA, so Porsche Club, and Trillium, called the Street Survival School. So we're not doing it right now with the pandemic, but typically there was one, maybe two events a year where it's basically a defensive driving nonprofit school that's held at the CAA Center, again in Brampton, the Powerade Center. And there's a coach assigned to every car, and we do like threshold braking exercises. There's a distracted driver exercise where we have them, do a slow autocross course while they're trying to text, and they realize, there's just no way that you can drive and do two things at once. At lunch, we have a semi come in and strategically park in the middle of the parking lot, and we place cars all the way around the semi, and every single student climbs up on the cab of the semi and looks out, and then realizes that I can't see the car directly in front of I can't see, checks out all the blind spots. It brings a whole new perspective to driving in the streets, and we really recommend this. It's $75. It's really cheap. It's a one-day thing, and they have a lot of fun, and they come walk away with it with just a lot more knowledge on how things work. We also ignite a couple of airbags. Some of them think that they don't really need seatbelts because they get a fluffy pillow airbag coming out of their, out of the steering wheel. So we ignite these things, and they realize it's like a small. It's an explosive. It's an explosive. Yeah, we send a full water bottle about 200 feet in the air. It's pretty violent, right? But these are all things that teens need to learn, right, and see. So. Gotta watch out for that.
So now on the other end of things, we've covered off school, track day, autocross. The schools start to get more advanced.
Right. So when you progress in the school system, every school, depending on how well you do and how you take to the instruction and how consistent you are, I would say consistency is what they really want to see. You start to build up, and then eventually you get into the advanced class, and then they have the advanced solo lapping, so that you can actually just go there for a lapping day with other people that are just as experienced, so you don't have to worry about, maybe getting thrown in on another lapping day with a complete noob. Yeah. So everyone has the same ability on those lapping days. So we can do that, and then eventually you can either become an instructor. So you get they approach you if they think that you're a good instructor material, or you can go into racing. So they actually have a race school. Where you do need to be an advanced student as a prerequisite for the school. And then with the schooling, it ends up being into one of the driving school weekends, is like basically have a race school. And with that, you learn about all kinds of really cool things. You learn, they have a mock start, and they basically, passing in a corner, going into a corner 3 deep, like 3 wide. Different point structures and just a lot of the etiquette. And with that, you graduate and you get your race license. And then with that race license, you're able to go in and do, a multitude of racing with different organizations throughout North America, actually globally, believe it or not. So that's awesome. The school that they.
And that's just the start. Like there's, I mean, licensing goes way beyond just, you know, a motorcycle or a car or a truck.
Mm-hmm.
When you get into racing, there are multiple classes of race license.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I only know of that. And then there's the top, which F1 is the super license.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. They have points against your license depending on how you drive. It's, but there are some race series where you don't need one, but obviously it's recommended that you do get one because you don't want to be going 3 wide as someone who's never done that before into a fast corner. You'd rather have that experience, and there's the term gentleman driver, and that just refers to a former type of individual. I'm not saying it's just gentlemen, it's ladies too, but you can buy your seat, and that's a lot of fun. But you want to be safe. Well, we've mentioned that word a few times now, but you want to be safe and you want to be fast.
Yeah.
So as much as you can, you know, buy into a fast lapping day, you want to make the most of it, and you want to have that etiquette that we also mentioned with regards to being on track with others. So race series, we'll touch on that. So we've touched on autocross. What kind of race series is there around?
We should probably touch on some time attack stuff first.
Oh yeah.
So before we go into door-to-door racing, where there's multiple, you know, cars on the same lap vying for position, you know, something a little bit safer but also competitive is a time attack.
Yep.
There's a few organizations out there like CSCS, and then you know, there's
Ontario Time Attack.
There's OTA, Ontario Time Attack.
Grid Life.
Grid Life. Yeah. So what you do is they class you depending on the mods on your car, and you basically go out and you have usually about 5 laps. So you got 2 warm-up laps, and then you have like 1 or 2 hot laps, and then you have a cool-down lap. Yeah. And you know, you have to kind of pace yourself so that there's nobody slow ahead of you, because it could really screw your time up. Yeah. And it's quite a bit of strategy. You also want to make sure you don't overheat your tires and your brakes on your warm-up laps, and there's you know, you want to make sure you have the right amount of fuel, because you don't want to go too much weight, and there's a whole science behind it, right? Yeah. And then there's all kinds of little nuances for the mods, and then, you know, when you get down to like tenths of seconds, you know, then you start looking at your competitors and like, oh, well, they don't have this or they don't have that, or, you know, it gets, I mean, it's really hard. It's really hard to just, you know, go in and race, because, you know, when we're talking about tenths of seconds, you know, the competition just, you know, escalates, and you get flustered and frustrated. And
so I've talked about that with Milk for Coffee, because I tried it for the first year. I'll take an opportunity to shout out my own channel. Check out Milk for Coffee on YouTube. But I did CSCS, and I've been wanting to do OTA, Ontario Time Attack. And the major difference was a safety change in the rule book, and that's kind of why I started with one. But my understanding from kind of research and seeing is that OTA is a lot more open. There's a lot more opportunity where, you know, of course it comes down to tenths when you want to win, but it's a lot more of a grassroots and open field, and there's a lot more opportunity, versus CSCS is a little bit more high profile, and it is guys who are coming out to truly win it. But with every racing, it's not just time attack. It starts to come down to the rule book, where you're trying to, you know, maximize what you can do with your car within the rules of the class that you're in, to make it as fast as possible. Preface by saying there's nothing faster than the driver modification. So the schools come into it, experience comes into it. But then when you get into your car, there's all sorts of things you can dive into, good tires or weight, whatnot. And that's the one thing we talked about earlier with autocross. You know, in some cases, a perfectly normal stock car is actually probably the best way to go for time attack, for autocross, because you're not getting penalties for having a supercharger or turbocharger or weight reduction. You're literally running a car off the street, which is impressive. It's less expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of, you got to watch, because it depends what you bring. Yeah. Like you could be, you know, you could bring, let's just say
a Vetta Miata.
Yeah, you could bring something that just inherently understeers everywhere, right? And it's an uphill battle, because now you got to deal with something that this specific car does, you know, when you can just you could have bought another car with a 50-50 weight distribution, and you could have been far better off just like stock for stock with a different platform. So, so keep that in mind. I mean, you can certainly race with anything, but sometimes you'll notice that
before you start dropping major coin,
there's quite a handicap if you start off with the wrong platform.
And there's classes, right? Like there are classes where there's front wheel drive or rear wheel drive, or and it comes down to power. So the goal is to even it out and make it as fun as possible. I say time attack is a great way to have fun with minimal risk around, like you said, door-to-door racing. There is other cars on track, but it's if you've done a school or you've done a couple track days, you're kind of used to that. It's a lot of fun, and it's not overly expensive. In the next realm, though, that's beating the clock, but then you actually get into events where you're racing.
Right. Now, so... there's regional, there's different organizations, and for the most part, they have a general rule book, and then based on how fast you are, you could break out and go into the next faster group, right? So you have to be pretty smart about the mods you do to your car. So you basically want to pick a class and then kind of build your car for that class. Because if you just slightly break out of that class, then you're at the bottom of the next class, and it's an uphill battle again. And then you're dumping more money into the car, right? So, and then that arguably becomes like a pocketbook racing, right? So the people that spent the most money are leading the race, and then the people that are just getting in, they're at the back of the race. And it's just like, after a while, you're like, what am I doing here? This sucks. I don't want to keep dumping money to be competitive, right? So you can go into that, and it could get, well, first of all, let's just start by saying racing's expensive. There's no denying it. Racing is the most expensive sport you can get into. It's, it's short of like sailing, a regatta or something. I mean, it's a money pit, racing.
Sailing, yeah. Well, okay, let's just start by saying if you're going to race your car, with the exception of maybe autocross, you're probably not going to want to take it to and from work. Because if you do something or something breaks, if it's as simple as your radiator goes and you need to fix your cooling, you don't want to deal with that on Sunday when you have to go to work on Monday to pay for it all. So
that's true,
you know what? I'd say most start to look into a second car, even if it's a cheap car. That's not a problem, but owning a second car is already space. So be aware, it's not cheap.
And there's a difference between racing and then the school. Like the school, you can drive 5 or 6 tenths all day long and still learn the line. But when you're racing, you're giving it all. Like, you're screaming, you're bouncing off the rev limiter, you're stressing everything on that car, right? It's a whole different thing. So, just keep that in mind. Racing is different from schools. And then lapping day. Lapping day is, I guess, like a school, but you probably, lapping day is like you're honing your craft that you learn at the school, then you're practicing it on a lapping day without having an instructor there, just kind of.
Well, that's where you get into tech, and talk to 11Tenths. There's stuff like timers and stuff like that. There's apps on your phone. You can go from like free stuff all the way up to a couple hundred to a couple thousand, and it's like there's solo timers, Garmin timers, all sorts of stuff.
They got the Catalyst. Aim's got the Solo too. So it's basically, these are timers. What they do is they kind of tell you, where you've gone the fastest in the segment. So they have like segments around the track, and you can basically, it'll tell you that you were slower on this segment than you were previous lap, and so it's constantly like real time telling you,
feedback.
If you're doing better or worse, or where you've improved yourself, and then later on you can actually kind of look at the data and they can stitch together a theoretical perfect lap based on the fastest segment times around, and it's honestly, you can learn so much just with that. If you wanted to go and do a lapping day, and just if you're one of those people that are really good at figuring things out, like some people, you throw them a box of Lego and they'll be like, I don't know what this is. Other people, like they like figuring things out themselves, right? So kind of depends on how you do it.
So back to racing, I'm going to try and list them off here because they're all pretty much just different. Mainly you want to see what fits your car and your abilities. by basis of the rule book.
Right. This is tarmac, though. I mean, we don't really want to get into rally and all the other stuff.
I was going to say,
ice racing. There's all kinds of.
There's all sorts. So you've got, so ice racing. Let's just cover that off.
Yeah.
I'm going to cover quick because we were talking about different brackets and stuff like that with regards to time. Drag racing.
Yeah.
Right, because you've got bracket racing. If you're if you have certain speed of car, you've got to have a roll cage. Like that's a safety thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, you've got all that for drag racing. We've covered time attack. Then you've got club racing. So you got like a Trillium Club where it's a BMW club type of race, or does Porsche do that as well? I believe.
Yeah, Porsche has racing too. They got their cup racing as well.
Vintage racing, which to be honest with you, it seems it depends on your car. You can get very expensive with that, depending on the vintage car, but it seems to be
the early 90s. They call it classic, the classic class in that vintage racing, and I mean that's a blast. Everyone, you're racing other people with 250 horsepower cars from the early 90s, and that's great as well. But so these are all these races are all sprint.
Yeah.
So that means their sessions are usually 20 minutes, like an hour, maybe an hour long. That's pretty much it. Then we delve into endurance racing. Right, so the endurance racing, generally you have a team, so you have a multitude of drivers that come out, and then of course then you have to have really reliable machinery. The reliability of the machinery essentially wins races. To be honest with you, if you could be consistent, even if you're slow, even if your car is running 8/10ths and there's other people out there passing you and they're faster than you. After a 15-hour race, the turtle ends up at the front.
Yeah, some dependability for sure.
Yeah, it's dependability and consistency.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised, the slower people end up winning the whole race at the end, where you have the guy that's banging the limiter and they're overheating and they have all kinds of issues.
Yeah.
And of course, fuel. You gotta for endurance racing. Anyways, we're gonna get into the whole endurance thing.
Next episode.
In a little bit, yeah. In a little bit.
So we're going to stop you there. It's we've covered off a lot here, and I think that's where we want to go next. So stay tuned for the next episode where we talk about the 11/10ths racecraft experience with Lucky Dog Racing. So that while we're finishing up, there's Lucky Dog and then there's Lemons.
Champ Car.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a great story behind them and their driver program with regards to racing with them and getting yourself into a seat.
Yep.
Give us feedback on this one. Remember, please like and subscribe. I hope you learned something. If you've got more questions, ask us. Shoot some comments down below. Reach us on any Instagram, email, Facebook. Come by the shop. Let us know how we can help you get further in your career, into your hobby. We'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.